When Putin became president of Russia, he tried to warn the world it's a very dangerous when a former KGB officer became a head of a state as Russia. But it was difficult to believe Russia might turn back to Soviet style. Unfortunately, Sasha paid his life to prove.
6 months on from the beginning of war, then, ordinary Russians have suffered because of sanctions. Ordinary Russians have died and been injured in the war. But do you think any of this has had an impact on Vladimir Putin himself or the people close to him?
Everything what happened for last 6 months, it's very important to people from Russia and from all people around the world. Everything what we tried to prove for last 22 years about Vladimir Putin now became a truth. And now we have not adapt to say he's a dictator, he's a killer, and what is he doing now? It's mostly against his own people. But when we're talking about suffering of Russian people, we need to remember Ukrainian people dying, and nobody asked them, would you like to die or not? And every time we need to remember this, and talking about Ukraine must be even more than it was 6 months ago. It needs to be in use, not maybe first, but every day people have to remember Ukrainian people dying, and it needs to be stopped as soon as possible.
So your plea then to keep talking about the Ukrainian suffering and also for the war to end as soon as possible. According to many experts, it will be a long war and it's not going to hasten towards its conclusion at all. How long do you think both countries can survive? How long can they deal with the effects of war, should it go on for some period of time?
I very much respect any opinions of experts, but if you remember, when it just started 6 months ago, many experts from United States, even here from UK, said 3 days and Kiev will fail. But it didn't happen because we never know for how people from Ukraine capable to fight, to die for their freedom. And they always say, just support us. And for how long? Again, it's a very tricky question. If Ukrainian people will receive help with weapons, with Lend-Lease, with everything, they will do it faster than even we expected. If it's going to be just words and saying how we want to help, but without real help, it might take longer. But every day of delayed cost human lives. And we all need to remember. And when this all started, I saw many people being happy to support, to become sponsors for Ukrainian refugees. But you need to understand, this is a marathon, and you need to have your all energy and power for a long period of time. And you need to be ready to help today, tomorrow, and again, we don't know for how long. I hope not so long, and it might be finished sooner than expected, because Russia looked very strong, and we called Russian army as the second strongest army in the world. But for what happened, for 6 months, Russia's army can't take a bigger advantage to Ukraine at all.
I know you've been to the country since war broke out with Russia. Tell us what you found when you went to Ukraine.
Since I was not able to come back to Russia, Ukraine became for me as, I can't say second home, but a country that I was in love because I could speak my language, culture was quite similar. But for after what happened 24th of February, I see is as two different countries and how people mobilized immediately, how they cooperated, how they started to like one side to fight against this aggression. I see what is difference between Russia and Ukraine. Unfortunately, people in Russia can't unite it against this dictatorship, against this regime, and can't realize what they need to do to become freedom and democratic country.
And tell me, you're husband, before he died, Marina, issued a warning about Vladimir Putin and his regime. He, of course, was poisoned. A British investigation blamed Russian intelligence. Tell us about the warning issued by your husband, Alexander.
When my husband, Alexander Litvinenko, died in 2006, all world realized what this regime is capable for. But he started to fight against this regime much earlier, in the late of 90s, and particularly when Putin became president of Russia. He tried to warn the world it's a very dangerous when a former KGB officer became a head of a state as Russia. But it was difficult to believe Russia might turn back to Soviet style. Unfortunately, Sasha paid his life to prove, and now it's another proof. All countries, as Ukraine, try to show to all world what this regime is capable for.
And we should say that you call Alexander, your husband, Sasha. That's how you address him or addressed him and speak of him. He also warned about war as well, I understand, and how Putin's actions would affect the Western world on a wide scale.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Sasha published his articles on internet, and his last article published in November, just before 1st of November, end of October, when he said, in a moment when you're all looking for virtual Bin Laden, of course Bin Laden wasn't virtual, but in the same time is a more dangerous person behind the Kremlin, just became a bigger problem for all world. And if you not stop him, he will start a world war. Sasha, my husband, said this in 2006.
Yeah, and that was quite a stark warning, some of which I'm sure we can resonate with now. A final thought from you. We've got record inflation levels really here in this country, and it's affecting much of Europe. Energy bills are through the roof, and a large part of this is because of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Do you worry that the West will, in effect, force the issue of the war with Russia and ask the country of Ukraine to back down because the West can no longer support it?
First of all, if I have a time, I would like to say we still underestimate of Russian propaganda. If we switch off Russia today, it doesn't matter. They had influence, not only to ordinary people, to some media, to politicians. And then this always pointed Ukrainian war in Ukraine. I believe this economical crisis not only because of that. If you know what happened because of COVID and how all economy and everything was just cut now, and Brexit as well, and we all have this problem now. Ukrainian war is a big issue, but it's nothing changed if you started to negotiate to Putin. You have to understand, it's not going to be warmer in your houses during the winter if you're going to sit with Putin and discuss. Only in the position of Ukrainian president and Ukrainian people, when they decide to negotiate and they will have this all power to say what they want, it need to be started.